Schulz. Ralph Stockdale, very famous. He was putting together the handbook on leadership, the first handbook on leadership. He actually had 3,000 sources, 613 pages. And I asked him, how many studies do we need to understand leadership? And he said, at least 100,000. I thought, wow, it took me a while to get past that to finish my 1 out of 100,000 or 1 out of 10 to the 22nd power. Today, do you realize that if you go on Google, there's 2.9 million citations on searching leadership. So my conclusion is that leadership is complicated. Next, maybe there's a way to make leadership simple, because if it's complicated, maybe there's another way of doing things. So I went through the next decade or two collecting good ideas. One was a quote from Eisenhower. Leadership is the art of getting other people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. Oh, I resonated with that. And of course, the golden rule that we all know. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Fit very well with leadership. Matter of fact, it's in the ancient Jewish writings. Confucius had it, Socrates had it, Jesus had it, Descartes had it. Everybody sees the same thing. So I thought, well, leadership must be simple. I actually went to Olympic coaches. And when I saw what they did for leadership and coaching was they got things down to a micro level I'd never seen before. It was amazing. I applied it to business competition teams. We started winning more and more. We actually won 84 national championships now, 23 international awards, and I actually learned a lot from those Olympic coaches. And then I also had a survey that I used. It was on power, rules, and values. And in the survey, when I went back with the researchers, I said out of 15,000, how many wanted more power exerted on them? And the number was 0. How many want more values and working together? And the answer was everybody. So I said, leadership is simple. Less power, more values. Then I started to apply leadership. There were some flaws in leadership was simple. I did a workshop on leadership for some high school students. There's about 300 in the audience. I said, how many of you are leaders and are involved in some sort of competition? All the hands went up. I said, how many of you that coaches yell at you? And then all the hands went up. And I said, how many of you think your coaches yelling at you improves your performance? That was about 20%. And I said, how many of you like your coaches yelling at you? 0. I said, how many of you, when you get to be coaches, are going to yell at your players? All the hands went up. I said, there's something wrong with this. It's supposed, it's not supposed to work that way. Also, I did a workshop for a company. They were in the hospital supply business, and they wanted more values. They came up with an idea for an award. And the award we came up with was an ice bucket that you move around from person to person, was nominated by someone else, and how they help somebody else out. And as we did that, everyone said, oh, be in our department because we help you. No, I'll be in our department. They're having a great time doing that. And the owner said, I think we've got the wrong award. We should give the award for the biggest mistake. We should have a bedpan award. That way nobody will make mistakes. And just like you, the air went out of the balloon in 2 seconds. And I said, I tried to recover. I said, well, why don't we try the ice bucket award first and not the bedpan award? That manager was a terrible manager. He had the answer right in his hands and didn't even see it. And even in teaching development. I used to run the teaching development office for the university. And I had one person when the department head sent them over. He had 1.5 on a 5-point scale. Terrible. I got him a 3.9 in 1 semester just by changing some things he was doing wrong, which was like everything. He got to 3.9. He was better than the department average. And then the department head went away, and he went backwards. He went back to the way he was before. You see, the great mystery is, why do people do it to other people when they know it isn't liked and they know it doesn't work? So leadership is actually very complicated. There's a great research area here. So I moved on. Maybe you get some advice from other people. There's different views on consultation. Some people say that consultation is what you do after you decide you tell people. Well, I think consultation is what you do before you decide to do things. There's a big difference there. Many managers have representatives from different departments, but you need the right people to represent. I'll show you some examples of how that works. Most people prefer to plan their own things and do them. They don't want to take somebody else's junky plan and try to make it work. They'd rather have their own plan and make it work. And somehow we have to seek and consult before deciding. So then I started looking around for different cultures. There are different cultures of places which are really strong cultures. I was at the University of Virginia. The University of Virginia, on the top of every door for every classroom at every level, there's a phrase that says, on my honor, I pledge that I have neither given nor received help on this assignment. And every student has to write that at every single assignment for every year. If they don't sign it, hand it in. Then they're expected to resign from the university. The professor comes in with the exams, puts them on the table. The students pick up the exams and pass them out. The students collect the exams and bring them back to the prof. And if someone looks like they're cheating, someone goes up and says, you're not supposed to do that. If you don't stop, I will turn you in. That's the honor code since 1842 at the University of Virginia. That's strong culture. University culture for faculty members. Thomas Jefferson started in Virginia about 1805. Now, what happened is that these days, I would hear 10 times per day with faculty members. What did Mr. Jefferson say about that? What did Mr. Jefferson say about that? When I visited his house, he was an inventor, he was a visionary. And that phrase was used by one faculty member to another to say, you're a stick in the mud, you're holding things back. What would Mr. Jefferson have said about your lousy black hat? This isn't going to work. Put that away. Let's be visionary. I heard that 10 times a day. And the Milliken Company, $5 billion in sales, private company. And when I heard about almost 5 times an hour. What would Mr. Pareto say about that? Alfredo Pareto, 80-20, take the things that are really big, work on those, the other ones will follow. That's strong corporate culture. I thought, well, that's great. How about the Olympic coaches? They did the same thing. What they did was they broke things down to the micro level. Some of the things that they did in performance, they would say, and I got this from one coach and passed it to another, how do you think you're doing? Rather than say, you're doing a lousy job, they would say, oh, what do you think you're doing? How are you doing? What do I need to do to help you? And also other coaches would start at the finish line and work backwards. That's much different than what the lousy coaches were doing. The great coaches were doing great things. The lousy coaches were doing not so great things. Then let's look at what we can do. Every day. There's nice words that we can do every day. And here's what I try to do. I try to do this at least once a day. Well, if that's the worst that happens this week, both of us are going to be okay. And you watch people smile when you say that. Rather than say, you messed up. My butter's too hard. You know, there's something wrong with the roll, it's too hard. Okay? There's something wrong with these, whatever it is. You want to brighten the day for everybody else, including all the cleaning people around the whole university and every place else where you go. If you see people smiling, then you know that you're on track. Smiles are free. You want to encourage chuckles and smiles. And if you aren't doing that, you see lots of frowns, go look at Groundhog Day and watch what happens when they replay. Because you begin to see different results when you get people to smile, and it's all free, and it's fun, and it's energizing. Now, there's also the other side, the dark side. The biblical version. Do not lie. Do not deceive. Oh, that's kind of interesting. That's related to do unto others, because normally you wouldn't want to do unto others to lie and deceive, because you wouldn't want them to do that to you. Now, the part that I've really become very astute about is that some people distinguish between lies and deception. It gets a little complicated as to what's a lie. I mean, had people say to me, do you think I'm lying? I said, well, I don't think you're lying, but, and I wouldn't quite finish the phrase. This day I'd say, you're probably deceiving. The opposite is trust. Here we are in Calgary. The velocity of doing deals is faster than any place else in the world, as one of my very wealthy now former students told me. Because accountants trust each other, lawyers trust each other, geologists trust each other. We can do more deals because we trust each other. We can do more, and everybody comes out ahead if we trust each other. Here's some deceptions that I've seen. Things are plausible but not really true. Things are true but for a different issue. Things are true for other cases but not this one. Somewhat true but really exaggerated. It's true but missing important facts. And the one I always get is, we consulted on this after we decided. Okay, now that might be true, but that's kind of deceptive that we consulted. So my view is that lies and deception are essentially the same thing because they're negatives. So you want to see smiles, not frowns. You want to see truth and actually having a good time at the same time. So that brings me on to number 8. I've done lots of time management workshops. So here's some things of productivity. I've done 450 time management workshops, 3,000 take-or-toy exercises, amazing productivity increases between the first time and the second time. The first time when people work with Tinker Toys, they build a square box, it doesn't go anywhere. You're supposed to build it high. They build it square. Second time they say, oh, we could do better. And they build it really high in far less time. So I think that everybody would be better off because Tinker Toys can improve productivity. Boy, if you haven't done it, try it. Now here's another one. I've done lots of time management workshops where people schedule meetings. Talked to lots of managers, even students. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Add them together for a meeting next week. What's the average? Wednesday. Morning or afternoon? Morning. What time of the morning? 8 a.m. plus noon. 8 plus 12 is 20. Divided by 2, 10 a.m. Okay? Bing, 10 a.m. Next meeting, 2, 10, 2, 10, 2. And here's what your schedule looks like. You've taken all your time and chewed it up with meetings. Do you realize if you ask these questions, you can have a lot less time working with meetings? You first, why do we need the meeting? It cuts out 20% of your meetings. How long? Cuts them down in half. Figure out what time you want to finish. Back up when you start. And you better have no 10 a.m. meetings if you can help it. Now, if it's with the president, you have it. But on the other hand, what you want to do, well, improve your productivity because, number 10, there's high and low energy periods. How many of you are high energy first thing in the morning? Who's low energy first thing in the morning? Who's no energy anytime? Okay, all right. Yeah, just do low energy work and low energy time. So bibliography, gathering information, low energy task. Texting, Facebook, low energy task. High energy task, reading and writing, high energy time. If you do that, your productivity will go up by 20%. Same hours, but you shifted things around. So that brings me on to number 11. Well, all right, how about companies? We've been doing lots of individual things. Now, the Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Kuhn in 1962, there was lots of peer-reviewed research, which is also very restrictive. Faculty members can't do what they want to do when they see interesting things because they're stuck in the paradigm of doing what the research grant wants. There's also in Silicon Valley. Do we have business plan templates, or do we have lean startup and pivot? The reality is what you need to do when you start with anything, you start with a wide range of alternatives. That's what I did with the Millikan Company. They couldn't understand why their research people weren't very productive. Well, I sat around, I had to figure it out here in 30 seconds. The first thing you do is generate 5 alternatives. Don't decide when you only have one. So, wow, that's brilliant. The reality is I knew about Gregoric's learning styles. Concrete sequential, detailed, abstract sequential, big picture, but also lots of footnotes. Abstract random, Myers-Briggs fillers. Concrete random, what if, suppose, how about? What happened was they hired all the sequentials that decided quick because they wanted to get their own things. And when I said, generate at least 5 ideas before you decide, they said, wow, that's brilliant. I actually had to figure it out here in 30 seconds, but it took a little longer. Now, here's a few other things on society. What do you think we could do for math and science for students and teachers? Most science teachers talk when they write on the board. I got a math degree and an engineering degree. I know how that works. The prof writes it on the board, you write it down, there's no comprehension. Now, rather than doing that, I watched the Renner brothers 20-some years ago. I watched them for 9 hours and said, what do they do? 400 students in one room, 400 students in another room, and the students were coming on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. and paying for it. What were they doing? They were talking before they wrote of what you should be thinking before you write. And the students said, I finally had someone to give me the confidence to do math. So what we need to do is to teach the teachers to do math better. We need less broken student success ladders, because once a student loses that ladder, which most of you haven't done, okay, they lose their confidence. So my conclusion is we're going to improve the math and science teachers, and we do that, the learning of students for everybody will get better. Number 13, how about some new ideas in healthcare? A lot of you are in health sciences. The original concept in healthcare was better to do nothing and risk more harm than good. There's kind of unclear medical history on this. Originally it was do no harm to your teacher, don't embarrass your teacher. Then it was do no harm to the patient, which is what most we know. My view is these days it's do no harm to the doctor. Don't make any mistakes for the doctor, otherwise it won't be a doctor. The medical schools typically cover diseases, not wellness. But if you look at some things we could do, Osler, the father of family medicine, said, listen to the patient. The patient often seeks non-medical solutions, and that doctors are resistant to do anything which is non-medical because it's not in the gold standard, not the standard of practice, and they can get sued. If you get sued, you're not a doctor anymore. So that's why doctors stay in their own space. So what do you do about that? Well, I've got some question marks here. Do you realize that medicine is maybe between 20 and 30%, you're not quite sure, evidence-based? It's not 100. In addition to that, at least 65% of research isn't reproducible. There's articles out on that. So we try to do the same thing with these famous articles that didn't work. My view is you use Google Scholar more and do your own research. So first, do no harm to the patients. Wellness is something better. ADD. Look at all the kids that have ADD. There's also back pain, whiplash, fibromyalgia. The reality is if you use quantitative EEG brain maps, non-invasive, it can be used for ADD, stroke, heart rate variability, and something non-invasive is better than nothing. Now, how about prisoners? Well, prisoners have lots of time because what they do is they network with other prisoners. That's terrible when they get out. You can use the same part for QEEG brain mapping, and you can actually have prisoners develop some skills while they're in prison. How about articulate ways to call BS? This came from me from John Fresani, one of my great friends, late John Fresani. He said, I wish I would have called BS more often. How do you do that? Look at the book from C.S. Lewis. There's a bus ride from hell to heaven. Some people are too small to be in heaven. Some people are too big to be in hell. So here's a phrase for it. I don't use it maybe once or twice a year. And it's that hell's a big place. A small person like you will fit really well. But let's look at the upside. For all of you in technology, engineering, science, and whatever, room temperature, room pressure, plasma, hydrocracking, already here. Drowsiness monitoring, already here. Oral drug tests, already here, and it catches marijuana only 24 hours, not 3 months. There's also synthetic and biology MIT labs you should visit. Conclusion is that technological breakthroughs are already here. All you have to do is go out and scout. So where are we? Where's life? Well, you know when you're born, you don't know when you're going to die. You got to play with the dash. Some people seem to have the secret of life. What they do is they operate as if they're going to take the money with them. I met someone that had a pin that had 2 question marks on there. Here's the questions. Number 1, if you die, where are you going? And I said, heaven. He said, why? That was the second question. I said, because I try to help other people. He said, you got it. Most people don't even know what the questions are. You see, life isn't about what we take with us, but about what we leave behind. For each of you at each of your clubs, leave something good behind for the next group. But each of you, when you get to be my age, you're going to be asking the question, what's life all about? Whether you're going to leave a better world or a worse world. And my conclusion is that we'll leave behind where we're going. So for each of you, I've gone through 18 questions. You're going to have your own questions. Take those questions and embrace those questions as you've heard from the other speakers. Because you will develop your own answers and your own conclusions. But my guess at the end of the day, you'll probably be in about the same space as we leave behind where we're going. Thank you very much.